the second video in which I show you how to create display rules in Solid Artis. If you remember from my previous video, I have a target model here which has a number of display rules that are active in it, which actually make it very colourful, and for me they help me understand what I'm looking at. For example, if I click on the LDM here, it has a number of properties here, and it has a number of display rules that it matches. As we see here, there are two display rules it matches. One has created the pale blue background and the other has created the tag. Let me close the inspector tab to get myself a bit more space on this screen. If I look at this object within the layer, again it matches a couple of display rules, and it has a number of properties, and we can see here alongside each property there is a little paintbrush symbol. The blue one is there all the time because there already is a rule based on this property. These others here don't have a rule based on the property, so I cannot switch it on and off. If I look at one of the attributes within that entity, I can see there are even more properties, and again the Power Designer object type property has a display rule, so the little pencil appears. And there are a number of other properties here that it might be quite handy to have rules so that we can tell, for example, if something is mandatory or identifying. Now if I switch to the model overview for that model, I'm looking at the list of activities and I've picked the task I created in the previous video, and I'm going to rename it now to give it a more generic name. So it's now called Display Rules Videos instead of Highlighter Layer. So now I'm going to edit the model. Remember, this is a temporary version of that model. It's very grey because there are no rules applied. If we look at the same entities I looked at before, we can see the logical data model. It has the same properties, but over here on this selection screen here, we cannot see any matching rules, because it's very obvious that none of these rules match because the model's all grey and a bit bland. If I go and look at my list of rules, I can see I've got a number of rules, but they're turned off, so I will turn those on. Click away, and we can see there are 3 rules that I turned on, and each affects one of the layers, and we can now see that the LDM layer does match a display rule. But there's still a lot of colour. The individual objects within here, like division and division number, are not. They're not highlighted at all. So what I would like to do is create a rule, and I first of all want my identifying attributes to stand out. And in this case, it tells me, if I just zoom in a little bit more, that division number in the Power Designer model, division number helps identify a division. So this property is a checkbox property and it says it's true. So I'll create a rule based on this property. It's given it the name of the property, that's fine. If I want to give it a description. I can expand this box and give it a description. Sometimes it's worth doing, and other times it's very obvious what it's doing. And all it's saying is, the query is saying that an entity will match if there is something in this property. Now down below we choose what to do if this is true, and it defaults to showing the value of the property and with a color, and it defaults to showing it on the right, to the right of the name. And I'm going to change only one thing. The auto from property, I'm going to have the backgrounds different colors depending on whether it's true or false. So I'll save that, and it is automatically turned on because I've created it. And now I can see that if I look at division, there are the attributes on there, and you see on here as well, they're showing the words true or false. I can turn this rule on and off by toggling it in the list of properties. See, I click on the little paintbrush and the rule gets turned on, gets turned off. Now, I'm looking at this and thinking, I only want to know if it's true. I'm not really worried about those where their value is false. So I want to edit the display rule, and I can go to the list of display rules and find it, but also can just click on where it's names a display rule in the inspector tab. So here it is, and I want to use a different query. So instead of just saying is it empty or not, I just want to show if it's true. Because it's a yes, no, true, false checkbox, I can test to see if it's true, and I'm interested if it's true. If I was only wanted to show the ones that were not identifying, I would use the predicate is false. So now it's only affecting the attributes where it's true. So if I pick a different one, you'll see that it no longer matches. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my list of rules, and I want to create a new rule. So I'm going to go to the Edit Display Rules dialog, and I'm using the button Create Query because that's effectively what you do first. You create a query and then you add a rule to it. I'm going to create two rules, and they are very similar to rules I created before. I'm just going to base one of them on this PDM highlight. I may change it completely though. I'm going to call it PD object type tag. I could have done that much more easily, but I've decided to do it this way. Now my rule is just saying if Power Designer object type has a value, the entity matches, and I want the tag. Notice that the rule I copied had fixed text. I don't want the fixed text. I want the value to be from a given property, and it's the Power Designer object type. If I had done this from scratch, it would have been a lot less work. But I did just want to show you that you can copy and then edit an existing display rule. So I was on the right, I want the value to come from the property. So I click on Save, click on OK, and now you can see that I have a tag on all of these. Now if I go back to my rules, edit display rules, I will actually copy this one again because I want to create an identical rule that just has a different effect. So I will clone this and rename it. I will highlight it instead of using a tag, and it'll be highlighted again with the color automatically based on property values, so they should be the same colors. Now we can see that my division number attribute matches both those rules, two rules, sorry, of the three I've just created. Division matches 2, the highlight and the entity and the tag, sorry, and the LDM now matches 3. Okay, that was fairly simple, wasn't it? I have created some new rules. Let me just create a new module. I'll call it entities, and I will take the 3 rules I've just added and put them in that module there. And by the way, I didn't point out in the last video that you can see in the middle here the name of the module that a display rule is in. And if I just select a module, I can highlight, I can see in my list just the ones that are in the module. And the drop down here does actually allow me to switch them all on and off, just the ones in the module, which can be very useful. Okay, last thing for me to do now is save the revision to the task model. Make sure I do not submit it because I'm not ready to update the parent model yet. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.